What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. Let's continue our conversation on the year of 1943. Now, in our prior video, Henry Armstrong would be outboxed by the great Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, keep in mind, Henry Armstrong was 30 years old, yes. And Ray Robinson was the up-and-coming phenomenon. The crowd didn't like it because, keep in mind, Henry Armstrong had opened up the garden with the new promoter, Mike Jacobs. And Henry Armstrong would become the first black featherweight champion in boxing history. This was 1937 against Petey Cerrone. And he sold out the garden. From that point, Henry Armstrong was a crowd favorite. He would win a lightweight championship title from the Hickelmeyer Hurricane, Lou Ambers. And he would become the second black lightweight champion in boxing history behind Joe Gans. Henry Armstrong would lose his welterweight championship title in Madison Square Garden against Fritzy Zivik. And then this was in 40, and he would be stopped in 41 in a return go. The crowd had sympathy for Armstrong because Armstrong had the heart of gold, and he was a tiger in that ring. But what the audience would always appreciate is the next up-and-coming fighter who would take the baton from the man who they would always admire. Pretty much with Larry Holmes and Kenny Norton. Everyone knew who Kenny Norton was. Everyone respected Kenny Norton on the performances against Muhammad Ali and others. But they never got over the fact that Larry Holmes would take the crown away from Kenny Norton, and he was sandwiched in between Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. So Larry Holmes never got his respect. Ray Robinson made sure he got his respect because he was very charismatic, and you can depend on Ray Robinson for defending his honor. If you want to know how Ray Robinson performed on the inside, I'll take you to a fight between Shakur Stevenson and Jamel Herring. Shakur Stevenson's inside game that evening was a master performance. Whoever trained Shakur Stevenson, that trainer's trainer, had watched Ray Robinson at some point. He had to. Besides Shakur Stevenson's natural skills and ability, he had to have an iron look at Ray Robinson. Because what Shakur Stevenson engaged in was the F-stop L12, 9 gauge, and the mayor on the inside. The mayor is the Philly Shell, Georgie Benton's wonderful, masterful defense. If you watch Georgie Benton against Reuben Hurricane Carter, that will answer the question, how to handle a man on the inside. I take you to a contest that took place November 19th of 43. It was Bo Jack when he defeated Bob Montgomery in 15 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden. And Bo Jack would regain his precious jewel, the New York SAC lightweight championship crown. It would be the second of 4 bouts between those two men. Bo Jack weighed 133 pounds and Bob Montgomery weighed 134 pounds. He was a 4-1 favorite. With 17,000 spectators in the audience, and Henry Armstrong had left Bo Jack's camp because Henry Armstrong was training Bo Jack. And that's why Bo Jack was able to knock out Tippy Larkin in 3 rounds to capture that New York SAC. lightweight championship crown. It was vacated at the time. But Armstrong had other business to take care of. He knew he was going to be facing the phenomenon Ray Robinson. Armstrong would take on Ray Robinson and Bojack in 43. You talk about passing the torch to some great Hall of Fame legends. February 5th of 1943. Jake LaMotta would defeat the 3-1 favorite Ray Robinson in 10 rounds. The highly respected Bronx Bomber, Jacob LaMotta, fought Ray Robinson at the Olympia Stadium in Detroit, Michigan. It was in front of 18,930 spectators. It was a sold-out joint. In 1941, a young 23-year-old Ray Robinson, according to Ring magazine, when you look at the rankings, in the 1942 edition of 1941, number 1 ranked welterweight was Ray Robinson. Number 5 was Charlie Burley, and number 6 was Holman Williams. Number 7 was Coco Kid. You talk about a crop of fighters in the top 10, let alone in the top 5. 1942 as a middleweight, Tony Zale was the champion. And Archie Moore was ranked number 1. Charlie Burley was ranked number 2. Number 3 was Holman Williams, and number 4 was Kid Tenero. Number 5 was Jose Basora. Number 7 was Jack Chase, and 8 was Eddie Booker. As a welterweight, 1942, Philly Ray Cochrane was the champion. Ray Robinson was number 1. Number 2 was Armstrong. Number 3 was California Jackie Wilson. 4 was Coco Kid, and 5 was Earl Turner. Now, I told you how the fix was in with a lot of the fights that took place in the 1940s. Because the black fighters during that time understood the game. And many of them had to take dives. Al Cervani was connected with the mob, and he affiliated himself with Henry Armstrong. And Armstrong was a gladiator. He didn't take dives. He would carry you if the pressure was put on him to do so. But he wouldn't deliberately take dives. Yes, he took money in California when he took on Sefino Garcia in 1940, but he didn't think he would be jobbed as he was. But the mob had their hands and fingerprints all over the promoters during that time. Your life was threatened. Your family's life was threatened. And that was the height of Black Murderers Row. And every last one of those fighters would receive visits at their doorstep, in the locker rooms, at the train station stop. Sometimes the hitmen would not say a word to them. They would just look at them and let them walk on by. The fighters knew that the night was not their night. 1943, the champion was Tony Zale in the middleweight division. Number 1 was Jake LaMotta, number 2 was Holman Williams, and number 10 was Archie Moore. In the middleweight division of 1944, champion Tony Zale. Number 1 ranked Holman Williams. Number 2, Jake LaMotta. Number 3 was Charlie Burley, and number 4 was Coco Kid. Number 9 was Jack Chase. And Coco Kid went from 4 to 7. Didn't even have a fight. Yes, the rankings were manipulated, but it were never in favor of the black fighters. Freddie Red Cochrane was a welterweight champion. Number 1 ranked was Henry Armstrong, and number 2 was Sugar Ray Robinson. Freddie Ray Cochrane had taken the title away from Fitzy Zivit when Zivit took the title away from Henry Armstrong. But Freddie Ray Cochrane, who, by the way, never gave Ray Robinson a legitimate shot at the title. Never gave him a shot. Robinson was ranked number 1 from 41 into 46 when he would take the title away from Tommy Bell. The belt was actually vacated by Marty Servo. Servo was supposed to fight Ray Robinson in challenge of his title, and he decided not to. The excuse was a broken nose when he took on Rocky Graziano, as the excuse was for Sammy Engat that he broke his hand when he was supposed to give Ray Robinson a shot, although Ray Robinson was not ranked in lightweight, but it was a discussion that they had in order to sell tickets. But I'll tell you, Ray Robinson was a master performer. And we talked about Izzy Charles, and we talked about Ike Williams to an extent. Yes, we went over Bo Jack and Bob Montgomery. We touched on Archie Moore. Took a look at Charlie Burley. And all those fighters that we talked about were qualified to not only get a title shot, but to win the title. But they couldn't be bought. And that was the problem. To give you an example of another good fight, on a Thursday evening, February 16th of 1943, Cleveland's 175-pound Jimmy Bivens, he was known as the Spider-Man, defeated the Cincinnati Cobra, Izzy Charles. The Charles weighed 165 pounds. And what was interesting about that contest was that Bivens would not only outbox Charles, who was a masterful performer, but he would stop him. And that really shook up the arena. The contest took place in Cleveland. Now, champion Gus Lesnovich had watched the intensity of that performance. He watched Jimmy Bivens outwork Izzy Charles in front of 10,355 spectators. The highly ranked Spider-Man was down on the cards, and he would make a comeback. Jimmy Bivens of Cleveland would become the fastest and the finalist of the Duration tournament, and he would eventually pick up that strap with Joe Louis to go into the war. Jimmy Bivens would take on Anton Christopheridis, February 23rd. On February 16th of 1943, Ray Robinson defeated Jake LaMotta in front of 15,149 spectators. They paid collectively $60,710.50. The contest took place at the Olympia Stadium. And Ray Robinson was a master. But he got dropped in the 7th round in his own corner. Got up and understood. You beat me once, you don't get a second shot. Robinson fought Jake LaMotta twice in 1943, just 3 weeks apart. Sandwiched in between a fight between him and California's Jackie Wilson. Wilson was in the military at that time. Ray Robinson went in 1944. But both these men could use the jab. Ray Robinson would become as strong as Jake would run out of gas. Jake LaMotta would suffer a fractured nose. Ray brought in 132 contests into that bout. He would give up 15 3/4 pounds. Jake LaMotta weighed 160 3/4 pounds himself. The referee was Sam Hennessy. It begins counting as Ray is hit with a beautiful shot on the side. And the fight broke out in the streets, broke out in the stands. because many had Jake LaMotta defeating Ray Robinson coming into that contest. Boy, did they get the shock of their life. Now, Ray Robinson would win 89 consecutive bouts with 63 knockouts. One week earlier, Ray Robinson would defeat California Jackie Wilson in New York's Madison Square Garden. 1941, Freddie Red Cochrane was the champion. Ray Robinson was ranked number 1. Tony Zale, as a middleweight, was the champion. Holman Williams was ranked number 1. Charlie Burley number 2, and Jake LaMotta was number 3. Graziano number 4. Number 5 was Marcel Cerdan. You had 6, B.B. Washington. Number 7, Little Tiger Aaron Wade. Number 8, you had Burt Lytell. And what the promoters were doing, they was making impossible opportunities for the black fighters during that time, because the matchmakers would make sure to match up 2 black fighters in the case of Black Murderers Row, although they were not ranked behind one another. But they would pick a number 7 rank, let's say in the case of Coco Kid, and number 4, let's say Charlie Burley, and match them up. And making sure that Marcel Cerdan or Rocky Graziano wouldn't have to face any of those men. The only fighter outside of that community would fight the Black Murderers Row was Jake LaMotta. Jake LaMotta wanted to challenge. He wanted to smoke. They raised the hand of Jake LaMotta with Holman Williams, and Holman Williams was robbed. Holman Williams won that fight with Jake LaMotta, but they would give it to Jake LaMotta. And had that not happened, Holman Williams would have fought for the title. January 12th of 44, the future world champion, Beaufort, South Carolina, Smoking Joe Frazier was born. He became the 1964 gold medalist in the heavyweight championship division at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. He would take on Oscar Bonavena, Muhammad Ali, Jimmy Ellison, Jerry Quarry, George Foreman, Bob Foster. And he would knock out Buster Mathis Sr. to become a champion. January 25th of 44, the world light heavyweight champion, Jimmy Bivens, would sign autographs and finally get his opportunity. He was in the stands. He was on the card of the lightweight champion, Philadelphia's contender Bobcat Bob Montgomery. He would knock out the future NBA lightweight champion, Trenton, New York's Ike Williams, in the 12th round. January 25th of 1944. Ike Williams knocks out Johnny Hutcherson in Philadelphia, battering him brutally in 3 rounds. The following year, Philadelphia Convention Hall, Bob gave Ike Williams his first stoppage in 12 rounds. Because Johnny Hutcherson was friends with Bob Montgomery. And it made that city look bad. You see, Philadelphians did not like Ike Williams because Ike Williams was tied to the mob, the Philadelphia crime family. Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo. And so Bob Montgomery was not tied to the mob. And the mayor of Philadelphia considered Bob Montgomery the champion and not Ike Williams. Although Bob Montgomery had the New York Sack and Ike Williams would have the NBA. Williams would get the NBA in 1945 when he would take on Juan Zorita in Mexico City and knocking him out in 2 rounds. Bob Montgomery would win the title from Bojack. Now, When Ike Williams would defeat Juan Zorita in Mexico City, Ike Williams did not get out of that ring without being bombarded with half-eaten sandwiches, and every drink color that you can think of was stained up on his body. They had to usher him out of the ring into the locker room. Who was waiting for Ike Williams in the locker room? Bojack. He said, we got to get it on, we got to get it on. And he was holding Ike Williams' belt when he said it, because Ike Williams was never presented that belt in the ring. And that's why that 1948, and I'm skipping a little bit, contest was one of the most brutal, because Bojack was beloved in Philadelphia, Ike Williams was not. And Bob Montgomery, who was considered the champion in Philadelphia, really irritated Ike Williams. Man, they're fascinating stories during those years. But that's why I enjoyed 1943. You had so many great stories. We'll pick up on the next video, 1943 leading into 1944. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. All great fights and all great fighters would never be forgotten on this channel. Thanks for listening. Be well.